Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is gentle, and it might loosen something you've carried quietly for years, the way a breath untangles a knot you forgot you were holding. What if the money logic you grew up with wasn't written in permanent ink? What if the numbers and rules in your childhood didn't know your future? What if all the limits you once absorbed were just small shoes and you've outgrown them? Here together we just begin. This is not a lesson or advice or a standard you must measure against. It is not a test passed or failed. Instead, every word that reaches you tonight is crafted, slowly, softly, to help your body let down its guard, even for a moment again, even when your eyes are closing. It's a lighthouse for the part of you still standing in old storms, tensed for the thunder, ready to flinch at the flash of old money fears. Here, we don't analyze, we remember. We remember you had small hands once, small tools, small ledgers, and a family script whispered over and over. Save that, hide this, hope for little, ask for less. It isn't shameful to have learned it, only human. Maybe you believed that budget was the sky itself, but what happens tonight isn't about dismantling, it's about repatterning. Each sentence is a signal to your nervous system. The debts of childhood belong to that childhood. The credit and blame and tiny pricing logic that shaped your earliest stories of abundance floats out now on the breath. There are deeper truths, not shouted, not forced, but unfolded like new sheets across a bed you're allowed to rest in. If old family numbers echo when you name your price, if leftovers from someone else's lack touch your throat when you talk about worth, if you shiver at the edge of new desires, this entire journey is for you. Not because you need to be fixed, but because you're finally being gently met in the place your story began to tighten. So stay, whether your eyes grow heavy, or your mind drifts, or your skin tingles in the glow of even the thought of new permission. Let the words reach the part of you that keeps watch at night, that measures, that quietly remembers every list and ledger. If you've ever found yourself tucking away your biggest dreams, rolling them even smaller because someone once said resources were scarce, that needs should be quiet, that abundance was for later or for someone else. Bread breaks softly here. Time is not money here. You are not a line item or a balance due. The silence between sentences is as sacred as the words themselves. Trust the hush. Trust the weight at your feet, the slow settling of your bones. This space exists so you can loosen, layer by layer, the rules and rings you didn't choose. If tonight you recognize that old tension or the inherited ritual of rechecking your worth, you're not alone. There's a field wider than those old programs, a field inside you, marked by breath and kept safe by the voice that speaks now. That field is for running, playing, resting, all the things once rationed. It begins with a pause. It starts with the kind of listening that doesn't need you to try or to keep track. You don't have to listen closely. You don't have to do anything but receive, as if you are being wrapped slowly in a blanket spun from the softest threads of your own possibility. Each thread a what if, each pause a little more room to breathe into the future you dreamed as a child, before any budget was traced in red. Tonight, let the old balances rest. Let the story that once defined your limits become the soil from which new confidence, new trust, and new timing begin to bloom. Softly, in the quiet, while you sleep, welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is simple, yet it might softly change everything your heart believes about how you meet the world, and how the world meets you in return. What if the story of money you absorbed in the background before you could even spell abundance, was never meant to limit your life? What if the hush of old caution or the hush of old strain were never a reflection of what you deserved, but merely echoes of those who whispered to you in their own hope, fear, and longing? What if every inherited budget, every tale of saving, scrimping, shouldering more, wasn't a cage, but an old song, and the melody is free to drift away now? Here, tonight, I invite you to rest with me at the threshold between what was given and what wants to unfold. This is not a lesson. It's a gentle undressing of old armor, every sentence, a lullaby for places inside you that were taught to strive, to worry, to shrink just enough. Each phrase is spoken so your body can unwind while your deeper soul, the one untouched by circumstances or small ledgers, begins to hear the possibility in something kinder. This is different than just learning. This is a slow, cellular remembering, a quiet allowing. Here your nervous system gets to lay its burden down, if only for tonight, so a lighter truth might enter in. If you've ever measured yourself according to someone else's chart, if you've ever lowered your prices or your voice to fit within the margins set long before you dreamed for yourself, if you've ever suspected that the cost of wanting was shame, secrecy, or too muchness, if you've wondered whether there was something wrong with carrying longing, or if your birthright was simply more room to breathe, this entire episode is yours. Every line I speak is meant to help you untangle, to soothe, to reawaken. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to judge the past or force a tomorrow. All I ask is that you let these words touch the part of you that has waited, quietly, patiently, for permission. So let yourself drift with me. Let the soft logic glide over skin, bones, old memories. Let the logic of the heart, not the logic of the ledger, seep beyond the mind, into the places that decide quietly how much to receive, how much to risk, how much to hope. It can be so easy to assume the rules are fixed, the same numbers, the same temperature, the same ceilings. But what if tonight something ancient softens? What if every inherited contract can update mid-dream in the hush and safety of darkness, where no one is watching, no one is measuring, no one is keeping tally but you? This space is unhurried. This unfolding takes only the time a heart needs to rediscover its own bottomless trust. Here, nothing rides on doing or changing. All that matters is the drifting, the gentle reselection of truths you would have chosen had you known you could choose. Because you were sovereign, even before you first counted a coin or overheard a grown-up worry when you thought you were safe in sleep. You have always been the authority on what you are worth, and yet you did not have to prove a thing to become more precious. Stay, even if the body gets heavy, even if the thoughts begin to blur and slow. Hold the possibility that there's nothing left to hide, defend, or plead for. Stay with your longing, your remembering, your truest self untethered. You don't even have to listen closely. Let your breath fall long. Let the sentences ebb and pulse like distant tide. No effort, no grip. Let it all surround you like early morning light, quiet, unasked for, inevitable. This is the start. The gentle remembering that your childhood budget never defined your bank account, and your birthright is not scarcity but ease. Surrender to the journey. Let it fill the room. Let it fill you, and let yourself softly fall. Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is gentle, but it might change the way you see every number tied to your name. What if all those tiny rules, quiet warnings about what you should need, were never really yours? What if the price tags and silent sacrifices you learned as a child could be dusted away like old ledgers in an attic, finally ready to breathe? What if the small stories about not being enough could be rewritten, even here, especially now? Here, there's nothing to fix. Every word is crafted so your body can rest while your heart softens toward a new truth. Worth isn't measured by pennies or praise. If you've ever caught yourself shrinking, holding back, or feeling uneasy about wanting more, this space was made for you. So trust the journey. Even if you drift, let these words carry you somewhere lighter. You don't have to try. Let this softness settle around you and do the listening for you. There is a quiet place inside where memories and money blur together, a tender crossing of care and cost, and perhaps even now, you can still feel the echo of tiny permissions, hushed negotiations that once set the tone for what you were allowed to have or to hold. In some homes, love came as a number, a yes to the shoes, a no to the better lunchbox, a maybe, as if everyone was on their best behavior. There was a price on splurging, an invisible weight on asking for more, and little ledgers wrote stories that nestled inside the nervous system, tucking away patterns like tightly folded notes in old pockets. In those early rooms, the currency of affection might have felt tangled with receipts and rationing. You might remember how warmth sometimes shimmered between coupons, how a treat could unlock laughter, or a withheld penny could shutter the light for days. Maybe you learned to be reasonable, to be grateful, to want less, because less was safe, less never rocked the boat, less was easier for everyone to love. Breathe in softly here. What happens for most is those tiny policies of the past quietly become the blueprint. Adulthood arrives, but the dashboard lights are wired in childhood settings. The careful calculations, the holding back, the praise for thriftiness, the anxious check of every bill, these habits glide under the surface, unnoticed, driving the hands that price, or the lips that say yes when the heart says I want more. Sometimes it is as if that kitchen table, where the month's budget was whispered or thundered, is still humming beneath your daily choices. Sometimes the impulse to self-deny appears in invisible forms. Refusing to raise your prices, offering extras for nothing, saying sorry as you send an invoice. Each is a gentle echo of old proof you can be good, reasonable, worthy of approval. Each move is a way of staying close to the love you learned, even if the lesson fits a life much smaller than the one you're living. Breathe out gently now, yet there is another way. It begins the moment you notice, just notice, that your childhood budget doesn't define your bank account. That you are, in this moment, able to unspool those tightly wound threads, to set them on the bedside like an old sweater grown too small. You do not have to keep carrying that pattern of equating self-worth with sacrifice or of equating love with limits. You are not required to shrink into smallness just to keep the peace of a long-gone room. The voice that once said enough is enough was meant for a different hour, a different life. It is safe to hear it, thank it, and let yourself reach further. Notice how your breath feels as it softens. Imagine. As if every time you paused at a price, felt a flush of doubt, or held back from receiving, you could trace the thread, not as blame, not as burden, but as gentle archaeology. Each sensation, each twitch of guilt or urge to hide, is just a relic and not a requirement. Let the old coins rest where they fell. You are free to choose differently, again and again. Perhaps the reason this truth is so tender is because it holds the weight of both longing and loyalty. We remain loyal to those who taught us safety, even in scarcity, because love itself was measured out so carefully. But what if love is the only thing not meant to be budgeted? What if abundance can flow, even as love remains steady. Breathe deeper and feel into this paradox. You were shaped within a room that rationed, and yet your spirit was always wider. The world before you is not the kitchen diary, or the birthday compromise, or the held-in desire. The world before you is untouched, undefined, and your presence fills it in new ways. Sometimes the past manifests in whispers. You hear the old song, "Don't reach too high, don't ask for much, don't lose what you have." Sometimes it flickers as a pause at the register, sometimes as a hunched shoulder in the presence of plenty. But you are allowed to let those songs pass through, like mist through open hands. Breathing in, you return to the truth. Worth does not require withholding. Generosity does not demand depletion. Safety need not be kept by counting crumbs. Let the images stretch out before you, a table set for plenty, where no face waits for apology. A room that never asks you to shrink so another can breathe. A balance sheet written in trust, not tally marks. This journey is not about erasing what was learned. It is about adding new lines to the story. Tonight, you give yourself permission to honor the ways you coped, while also loosening the grip of rules that never belonged to you. Approval is not a coupon that expires. Love is not a ledger that runs out. Possibility grows each time you notice where old patterns tighten and soften instead. In your next breath, sense the release. Allow remnants of not enough to float upwards, as if rising bubbles in soft water. Let the inner child sit beside you, watching patiently as new mathematics unfold, equations built on ease, on openness, on sovereignty that is quiet but assured. You are here, now, not at that table long ago, not bargaining for belonging. The contracts can be rewritten. The ledger can be left incomplete. You are freer than the sum of your childhood sums. Rest in that spaciousness. Let it widen quietly as you surrender deeper into sleep. It might be unfamiliar to notice that thoughts about money don't just live in your mind. Sometimes they live quietly in the body, coiled into shoulders, settled between the ribs, held like a secret in the pit of your stomach. Sometimes what we call scarcity is just breath held too long, muscles braced for numbers that never soften. A jaw that tightens, guarding every syllable of desire. What most do is carry the old budgets, memorized not just by numbers but by bone. Habits shaped by family ledgers, by spoken rules, by what was safe to want or safe to let go. Most people let the childhood budget run the present bank account, not by choice, but because the nervous system doesn't know the crisis has ended. Notice that now. Most people just keep matching the tension. Every anxious glance toward the checking account, every pause before buying what brings actual joy, every doubt before asking for a little more, it is ancient and tender and remembered by the tissue as much as the mind. Breath in. Hold, let it go slower than you usually do. Some bodies learned that there was only so much room, only so much that could flow in, before it had to be squeezed, rationed, measured. Some learned to shrink wishes down small enough to hide. Some learned to count pennies in the heart, tallying up quiet hopes, crossing off longings before they ever saw the sun. Now, feel the ground under you. The way the spine rests gently, the way the chest might loosen on an exhale. Just for now, you do not have to hold the old math. Just for now, you might begin to notice the body is not your bank. The past is not the price. Most people, maybe even you, have danced this old economy for so long it feels like family, a familiar script. Don't ask for more. Don't take the last piece. Make it stretch. Make it last. Close your eyes if you haven't. Let your ribcage widen. This breath does not have to be portioned. This rest does not need to be earned. Sometimes what we fear about money is what the body fears about trusting. Sometimes what we undercharge is what we underbreathe. What we save in secret, we also save in our chests, like letting love in only to a certain measure, or relaxing only after every box is ticked. Sometimes, the childhood budget becomes a limit for every kind of receiving. Let that thought drift. Let your fingers uncurl without story. Let the belly rise just a little more, as if there were room to receive, room to be filled, room for one easy, unmeasured sigh. Can you remember a moment, not in numbers, but in sensation, of never enough? Was it a slammed door, a quiet dinner, a look exchanged over a receipt or a bill? Was it silence after an ask? Let those old scenes blur, for now you do not have to solve them. Breath in a little slower, maybe all the saving, all the counting, became a code of protection. The body learned to ration dreams the same way, to spend hope only where it seemed safe. But here, under this quiet, nothing is being asked. Here you are allowed to notice the math dissolving, the grip softening. Nothing needs subtracting. No more balancing acts, just a slow surrender to a body relearning ease. Let your lips part. Let air move through you a little further, as if your very cells are tasting life's increase. Most people don't pause here. Most keep rushing, adding up minutes, hoarding small successes, budgeting sleep as if warmth and rest were debts. But not tonight. There are other ways to budget. You can let tonight's safety be a currency. You can let the pace of your breathing be your only ledger. You can audit what it feels like to let go a fraction more, maybe, if the chest loosens, if the hips rest heavier on the bed, the world doesn't end. Maybe the tightness around gain or giving is not yours. Maybe it's just residue, a muscle memory of having to make do. A nervous system that staggered through lane years and never realized the season had changed. Breathe in the new season. Let it be a little slower than it used to be. Let your toes uncurl and your face relax. Trace how soft the body starts to become when it realizes it's allowed. Allowed to let go of the ledger, to rest the hands that kept inventory, to expand without permission slips. Tonight, if the thoughts return to old math, if your mind wants to keep running the numbers, just notice. Notice it with the gentleness you'd offer a child counting old coins, unaware that a new currency is available. There's no blame here at all, only noticing, only slow release. Sometimes the math wasn't even about money. Sometimes it was counting how much affection, how much approval, how much belonging you were allowed to have before it became too much. Sometimes what shrank was not just the wallet, but the sense of time, always rushing, never arriving, measuring every minute because it never once felt like enough. Maybe in this pause, with the body growing heavier, you can let the accounting stop. Maybe you can feel what it's like to have no accounts to settle, no debts to pay off, just presence. Adjust the fullness of now, hold your breath at the top. Then sigh slow and shaky, letting your whole system feel what it's like when nothing has to be earned. Not this peace, not this breath, not tomorrow's chance. All available if you just loosen your grip. The childhood budget lived in your bones, but it does not own your account. The nervous system learned scarcity, but tonight it can rehearse sufficiency. Again, let go, as if there's always another breath coming. As if abundance could be memorized too. As if the body could learn overflow the way it once learned to brace. Rest here, soft, honest, unhurried. Let every muscle fractionally loosen, trusting there's more where that came from. And if not tonight, then just for this moment, let the ledger dissolve. Nothing to track, no score to match, no love to ration, just breath. And what if that was enough? Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. And tonight's message is gentle, but may reshape everything you believe about what's possible with money and self-trust. What if the rules you grew up with were not truths, but small agreements? What if the ledgers of childhood scarcity could be rewritten, line by faded line? What if your grown self could now sign a new contract, one that allows in more gentle, spacious possibility? This isn't a lesson. It's a recoding for your deepest self. Here, every slow sentence is designed to soothe your nervous system, while letting your true worth rise quietly to the surface. If you've ever undercharged, felt small for wanting, or built your life around inherited limits, this hour is for you. So stay close. Even if you drift off, the healing will continue beneath each breath. You don't have to listen hard. Just allow this forgetting and remembering to settle around you. Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is simple, but it might change everything you believe about earning, asking, and what you're allowed to receive. What if the numbers you learned as a child were just someone else's best guess at safety? What if the limits held in old family ledgers were not the edges of your worth, but echoes meant to be softened? What if what you charge, accept, or ask for could be rewritten each night in the softness between heartbeats? Here, this isn't a lesson, it's a recoding. Every sentence is designed to settle your nervous system, so your core can wake gently to a kinder truth about how much life is allowed to give you. If you've ever hesitated to ask for more, found yourself shrinking your dreams quietly when numbers appear, or wondered why your prices still feel tethered to younger rules, this entire episode is for you. So stay with me. Even if your thoughts float away into sleep, let these gentle threads reach the deeper parts of you. You can let go now, and still, everything you need will remain. You don't have to listen closely. Just let the words be a blanket and let yourself rest. There is a quiet ache that lives in the muscles of memory, sometimes so gentle it passes as normal, sometimes so old it sounds like your own voice. Most nights the body curls around old rules, hand-me-down beliefs tucked beneath the skin like extra blankets. There, in the hush, a ledger whispers. How much is safe? What costs too much? Who gets enough? What's allowed? The weight of childhood budgets, numbers once scrawled in brittle notebooks or echoed in soft warnings across the dinner table, they press between every wish and every decision. How could it be otherwise? Most of us grew up learning to match our breath to someone else's scarcity, watching the adults ration coins, close the curtains early, exhale with relief when a bill was paid, or hold their breath as envelopes gathered dust. Little bodies absorb these patterns. Without knowing, the chest learns to brace, inhale less so there's enough for later, exhale carefully so nothing is wasted. It becomes a rhythm, saving even the desire for more until it feels safe, measuring dreams along the lines of yesterday's caution. But what if that rhythm is not your truth? What if the supply that pulses beneath your ribs has never been a bank account, never been a tally of what's permitted? What if you could notice the urge to hold back and gently imagine loosening just for a moment? Pause here. Exhale a little more than feels usual. Let the shoulders fall, the jaw soften, let the next breath linger, fuller on the inhale, slower on the way out. There is no need to keep the breath on a tight leash tonight. Watch how it comes, how it goes, without judgment, without scarcity. Most people replay the same scarcity that raised them. The old stories that said, money is precious but dangerous, desiring more is risky, only fools trust the flow. We inherit nervous systems wound tight by warnings, the muscle memory of waiting, bracing, shrinking. But money, like breath, has always been meant to move. Each exhale makes room for the next inhale. When you keep holding tight, you stop the flow. When you cling to the last bit of air, you only feel tense, never safe. Where the chest constricts at the idea of spending, where the heart skips at wanting more, notice. A child learned to shrink desire to match the rationing around them. Not out of flaw, out of love, out of softness, out of the wish not to be too much. Tonight, let's allow each inhale to suggest receiving is as natural as letting go. Money, like air, is not a fixed ration. It circles, expands, nourishes, returns. Even as thoughts whisper old numbers, invite breath to teach you abundance. That voice that says, "Be careful, that's enough, don't ask. Save what you can." You can recognize its kindness and still choose a fuller breath. Sense the difference. A breath held tight is a life on pause. An open breath is readiness. Try again. Inhale slow as if the air was warm gold, no rush, just willingness. Feel it fill all the tense spaces beneath your ribs. Hold it a moment, then let it slip out long and quiet. Feel what shifts as there is nothing to hoard, nothing to prove. Money's first language was movement. It is not a lock, not a wall, more like tide, breeze, song, current. It cannot stay in clenched fists. It was always meant to pass through open hands, nourishing as it goes, leaving enough for what's next. If you have been living by childhood math, you are not wrong, but you are allowed to change the algorithm. Who would you be if worthiness was not measured by kept coins, but by how generously you let living flow? Hush those voices, not with force, but with gentleness. Each inhale is a reminder that abundance is not a punishment or a test. Watch the pattern: breath in, breath out. There is always more. Remember, before you learned scarcity, you simply breathed. What if tonight you practice not closing the door after every breath? Imagine the flow. Receive easily, give freely, restore without needing to explain. Let this cycle hum quietly as you drift. Notice where the ribs still tense at the urge to receive, the old contract in the spine that says, "I must earn every gift, I must be smaller to stay safe." Invite the breath to teach a new way, precious, slow, trusting. Feel how, even now, the air arrives with no condition. Rest here, let the body remember, and the soul rehearse what it already knows. There is a deeper math than the one you were taught. There is a richer cycle than the one you first mimicked out of love. As you drift, hear the growing truth in the quiet, your childhood budget, those tiny numbers, the careful rules, does not have the authority to decide for you anymore. Not about how much you can hold, not about how wide you can breathe, not about how freely you are allowed to receive. With every gentle inhale, with every trusting exhale, you choose a new rhythm. Money comes and goes without fear. Desire expands and contracts without shame. Safety belongs to your breath, not the page of someone else's ledger. Let the next breath be fuller. Let the next exhale be softer. The flow never left you, you are remembering it now. And as the body grows heavier, quieter, the truth keeps circling. Each breath is proof, you are already worthy of more. There is a place beneath memory where your worth lives untouched, deeper than hand-me-down ledgers, further than the echo of no, or not yet, or just enough. Already, without effort, you belong to this space. Already, you are enough. Pause here and let it find you. Inhale. There is nothing to earn. Most have spent years, maybe an entire lifetime, living by numbers set long before their first paycheck, each whispered worry over grocery aisles, Every grown-up conversation half heard behind kitchen doors shaped what seemed safe to ask for, what felt right to keep, what felt possible to wish beyond. Many still measure ambition by those childhood rules, the careful check marks in family notebooks, the hush when bills came due. We carry these ledgers inside, not on purpose, not even by choice. A tightness grows behind the ribs, as if breathing too much joy or allowing too much ease might fracture something old and necessary. We repeat the stingy stories in soft languages. Don't reach too far, don't charge too much, don't hope too loudly. Even when abundance knocks, the mind flips back to that small-town budget, that blue-veined envelope, that quiet belief. You must justify your wanting, but that math was never yours. The boundaries of then are not the boundaries of now. Already, in this breath, you are enough. Notice the way your muscles soften when the old scarcity stories float by. Notice how gentleness unknots the nervous system, like fog lifting from morning fields. The grip around your wallet, your wants, your wildest invitations, it can loosen. You can trust that letting go won't mean losing what made you safe as a child. Pause, breathe. Here in this moment, you are already enough. There are so many ways we try to measure our belonging. The salary posted on a family fridge, the numbers left after everyone's needs, the hush in the house when things felt tight. We learn to equate safety with self-trimming. Less play, fewer asks, dreams shrunk to fit a smaller box. Over time, the habit remains, circling back through adult choices, quietly bargaining with the universe, as though worth must still be budgeted, as though love arrives only in affordable pieces, as though time and trust are always in short supply. Notice the echo of these inner budgets. When you price your work, when you ask for help, when you say yes to something new, are the old family numbers running the show? Are you carrying invisible receipts for every comfort, every moment of rest, every taste of sweetness? Even now, notice how easy it is to shrink after you've stretched, to pull back after a small windfall, to ration out self-trust as if it's a feast for special nights only. But what if, right now, the accounting could pause? What if your value was unlinked from any season of thinness or plenty, from all the tiny negotiations and small denials? Already enough. Notice the relief that stirs, like warm light spilling through yesterday's cracks. The truth is, you do not owe. The keeping and the earning does not make or break who you are. Inhale. Already you are enough. Notice how enoughness is a silent current. You can float on it, no matter the surface weather of your accounts, even as old patterns tug. The frugal reflex, the urge to save praise for another, more deserving version of yourself. Let yourself rest inside the possibility that joy and worth are not zero-sum. Pause, breathe out where fear once settled. Sometimes, enoughness is missed not for lack of abundance, but for smallness in expectation. The universe, like a patient parent, waits while you learn to receive without counting backwards to childhood. When love arrives, do you shrink it, inspect it, ration it? When time spreads before you and asks nothing, do you still sentence yourself to smallness? Notice, you were always enough, even in an old apartment or a crowded room, even when the numbers said less, or not yet, or maybe next month. Tonight, let memory grow soft around the edges. Let every old budget handbook, every passed-down austerity gently dissolve under this awareness. Enough was never meant to be measured. Already, even half asleep, you are whole. The scarcity code in your nervous system was only ever one program, not a prophecy. Notice the distance between not yet and now. Feel how the old stories, blessed, well-intentioned, but rooted in worry, can be thanked and slowly retired. Here there is no ledger to balance. Here you are already enough. Let that phrase land in your body, already enough. Already more than a line item, already free of yesterday's rules, already rich in ways that outnumber the old accounting. Breathe, let the grip go. Another slow inhale. You are already enough. Let each repetition spread beyond money, already enough to rest without guilt. Already enough to be held and to hold, not once you produce, but always, simply by being. Already enough to take up space here in this night in your skin. Already enough to drift toward the future. New contracts, new trust, new currencies of self-respect, unburdened by the accounts kept by others. Already enough. Stay with this. Even if you drift off, the truth will keep speaking deeper than dream. Each breath, a new receipt stamped paid in full. Already enough. Already, always enough. There's a sensation, softer than memory but older than words, as if deep inside your chest, you know which ceilings were handed to you. Not forged by your own two hands, but passed down, silent as breath. Family budgets spoken or slipped between the lines, echo through time, becoming invisible rooms where so many grown hearts learn to pause. Most people live here, within quiet borders drawn long before they questioned them. They walk with careful steps, spending, giving, risking just beneath that ceiling, not quite noticing how the threshold itself seems stitched from voices, rules, and glanced worry. It starts so early, those small sums, those anxious tallies. Money as the mark that kept love safe or danger distant. It's easy to grow up tracing patterns overhead, limiting thoughts blending with abandoned piggy banks, whispered warnings, urgent lights turned off to save every drop. You might find yourself holding back from what calls, eyes fixed on figures, as if the sky were set. Breath deepens now, feeling the way those old ceilings rest above you, and yet something stirs beneath the ribs, a low curiosity. What if that horizon could move? Notice how these ceilings rarely announce themselves. They dissolve into choices so quietly, you'd hardly point to a moment when you agreed. Pricing yourself just under what feels bold, declining the gift or the promotion, hesitating when joy approaches as abundance. Each pattern paints another brushstroke across the blue, line after line, a smaller sky. And so many, most, even mistake caution for destiny. Scarcity settles in the bones, a familiar hum passed down through glances and stories at quiet dinner tables. The ledger of the family becomes a ledger for the soul, etched in how much love is safe to ask for, how much rest is allowed, how much future can be trusted. Yet tonight, notice the smallest crack in that ceiling. A shift so gentle it barely registers, until you catch it, spaciousness above the old script. With each soft inhale, sense the slight shimmer at the edge of your inherited boundaries. If you let your mind wander, what would it see rising just above those lines? Would the old fear follow? Or could it be that the sky itself was never truly closed? Breathe, and for this moment, let the rules of lack hang loosely, like a light mist beginning to lift in the first dawn. In this silence, every inherited story is tender. Every family budget was a way to keep someone safe, loved, trusted. Notice the care, then feel. You are not required to carry their ceiling further. Let this idea stretch. Childhood limits, those numbers and warnings, were always meant for a younger world. The budget your family held was never meant to calcify around your future self. Just as the horizon finds space to widen at dusk, your worth begins to expand where their fears once pressed in. In money, in rest, in how much joy is welcome, the old ledgers slowly dissolve. Sometimes the nervous system holds tighter. It resists, not out of malice, but out of muscle memory. A child senses tension and learns. Don't rise too high, don't spend too freely, don't soar past the threshold. But clouds shift, and the mind can as well. Breathe here, staying with the sensation of room returning. You may have built your life around ceilings invisible to the waking eye. In love, giving just enough, never more. In safety, staying within patterns known, denying bold routes just outside your map. In time, rationing rest as if it, too, would run dry if you were too abundant in it. But what if every ceiling was only an echo, soft and fading? Imagine a limitless blue above the small room, each belief in need, each hesitation to ask, drifting like cloud wisps until nothing presses low. Noticing this, let softness wrap around your heart. You were shaped by old rooms, yes, but every room can vanish when you stay present with what yearns to stretch. Every few breaths, notice the urge to contract, then let it drift as the sky expands. Childhood lessons, family ledgers, modesty for safety, all dissolving, melting at the line where your willingness grows. Each time you say yes to more, whether a dollar, a breath, or a prayer for joy, you let light in where ceilings once hid the horizon. Imagine, with each soft exhale, the boundaries fade. The budget of your childhood dissolves into the blue, and what remains is not the limit, but the longing to touch what's possible. Scarcity can be a veil, not a law. Let the wind move through what held you small, and stay with the sense, right now, of more space than fear. You are allowed to feel uneasy, to notice each tightening before releasing. Simply linger here as the old edges soften and permission settles in. What was once law becomes choice, and with each slow moment, your nervous system maps a new sky where the horizon pulls ever upward, never down. This isn't a leap. It's a settling. Each gentle realization, each recognition, rewires the field inside the body. Stay here, witnessing, as the line between taught restraint and felt possibility dissolves. Breath by breath, permission finds the ceiling and lets it go. In time, you will wake and notice how your pricing, your giving, your receiving, all quietly shift. But for now, let your breath be proof. You were always bigger than the budget. The sky has never finished expanding. Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is simple, but it might change everything you believe about wanting more. What if the number you grew up watching wasn't a sailing, just a starting place? What if the hesitation you feel is just old protection, not a final rule? What if receiving more could be as gentle as letting your hands open? This isn't a lesson, it's a recoding. Every sentence is designed to help your nervous system feel safe, while your soul starts to remember its worth. If you've ever undercharged, overworked, or felt guilty for dreaming bigger, this entire episode is for you. So stay with me. Even if you drift off, the truth will still reach you. You don't have to listen closely. Just let it surround you. There's a gentle truth that unfolds as the body settles and the mind drifts. Even the smallest hands sometimes carried the weight of heavy ledgers. The echoes of early budgeting lessons linger in muscle memory, like faint, persistent threads running beneath the surface of thought. How easy it is to believe a childhood pocketbook still carries every possibility, every price, every answer. Most carry these early rules without ever noticing how they shape the day. Quiet voices tucked into the corners of memory, recurring reminders. Save that, not this. Too much, too fast. You can't just wish for more. The rules become fences, low or looming. etched so subtly that even in adult years, the vision narrows as if peering through a locked gate, only able to glimpse abundance through slats and shadows. The gate clangs softly, yet it holds its line. Sometimes the sound is a whisper. You must justify ration, prove yourself worthy to enter. Sometimes a murmur. Don't take too much, don't ask too loud, don't glow too brightly in the sun. But there is a place just beyond measurement and smallness. Breathe for a moment and notice where the edges have hardened, how the world once made you mark walls with chalk, track coins, trace every step for proof. Exhale, now imagine, behind those old constraints, a garden stretches quietly, lush, unbothered by arithmetic, not engineered by scarcity or overwatered by guilt, but humming, fragrant, alive. Now take a slow breath and feel the ground beneath your feet soften, from hard, cracked limitations to pillowed moss, cool and forgiving to your souls. Each step brings a color you don't have to earn. Sage and emerald leaves tumble in waves, interlaced with the scent of night-blooming jasmine, honeyed and full. There is a languid, unrushed stream threading through the garden. Its water is clear and deep, catching the light with every small current, glistening like the possibility of more, of enough, of always. Most people walk life's corridors as if their allowance is fixed, as if archived ledgers unlock only panic and pause. They clutch old receipts, proof that having more might mean being less loved, less safe. But within this garden, you are not asked to account for every petal and stem. Breathing out, notice how the weight in your chest eases, like vines uncoiling from a tight rope. The soft sunlight dapples across ripe figs, bursts of violet and gold, gifts offered simply because you exist. The rules of childhood wanted you safe, but they built high gates, sometimes bolted twice, sometimes traced with warnings in ink. Yet whenever the mind meets these gates, the body can loosen, the breath can spill out slow and warm, permission with no condition. Sometimes the old fears volunteer themselves without request, a chill along your neck, a stubborn echo. Careful, you know what happens if you ask for too much. Sometimes it settles as invisible brambles, threading through the ribs, pulling the heart back, closing the hand before you reach for what calls beyond the fence. But the garden remains, languid, plentiful, ancient. It is not balanced by loss or scored with shame. It remembers you before you knew currencies or contracts, before you learned to shrink. Notice now how the garden's air tastes, ripe and green, threaded with dew and the musk of peonies blooming so bravely beside the path. There is a hush here that says, what if you never had to tally up worth again? What if, beyond all histories, this quiet plenty waited patiently, never revoked, never rescinded, always accessible with a softer breath? Sometimes the legacy of pennies pinched lingers in grown hands, deciding what is charged or claimed, how high to price your worth, how much risk feels like safety, how much having feels like betrayal. The patterns persist, like walking old garden paths worn to dust, missing the soft explosion of wildflowers just beyond the bend. But even then, every inhale can widen the gate, every exhale can lay down another old account. The pressure eases when you let longing move at its own pace. The nervous system learned to flinch at plenty, the heart to skip a beat at asking, the body trained for vigilance might look for locked doors before open ones. Hear the soft wind in the garden now. It carries lavender, wild mint, the promise of new nectar. Each time a memory of lack rustles its way into your thoughts, let the garden answer not with reason, but with riotous color, a field bursting gold, emerald, sapphire, amethyst. A saturation instead of scarcity. Rest here just for now. If a flicker of guilt appears, whispering of who might scorn you if you step softly into this green world, breathe slower. Watch the guilt dissolve in a pool of shadow beneath the roses. Here there is no price for peace, no admission cost for joy. Notice as your shoulder drops, as your jaw eases, as your eyes adjust to richer light. Abundance was never about breaking locks, but remembering you held the key all along. The childhood budget was a small map, sketched out of care and fear, not a prophecy timed to your forever. The garden doesn't forget you, even if you outgrew the story others handed down. Even when you tiptoe, even when you hesitate, the path is padded, the air still fragrant with silent invitation. Here it's enough to just be. Let the nervous system unwind, coil by coil. Feel roots from your heels settling deeper, untangling from the old habits that once kept you from walking further. This is a landscape that forgives every pause, answers every question with a bloom, returns every fearful memory with new softness. So linger, float, wander. Notice a breeze cool on your skin, a sunbeam glazed with amber warmth across your brow. Each sense invited, each worry softened. If you ever believed you were small, remind yourself gardens outgrow their fences. With each breath, the gates fall away, until there is only you, barefoot in abundance, welcomed home by color, scent, and a gentle, infinite yes. Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is simple, but it might change everything you believe about wanting more. What if the numbers from childhood were just dust on a window pane, not a forecast of how brightly you're allowed to shine? What if presence, uninterrupted and full, was a currency that never runs out? What if the ledger you carry in your chest could be rewritten as easily as breath slips in and out? Effortless, natural, yours. This isn't a lesson, it's a recoding. Every sentence is designed to help your nervous system feel safe, while your soul starts to remember its worth. If you've ever felt your ambition shrink to fit someone else's scarcity, or hesitated to claim room for your deepest longing, this entire episode is for you. So stay with me. Even if you drift off, the truth will still reach you. You don't have to listen closely. Just let it surround you. Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is a gentle reawakening, a single shift that quietly rearranges what you allow, what you claim, and what you believe about receiving. What if the rules you learned about money weren't meant to be your limits forever? What if the voices that warned and measured were only keeping you safe, not small? And what if the budgets from childhood were a draft, not your only script? Here, there is no lesson to memorize. Each slow phrase is a hand held out, safe, steady, calm, inviting your nervous system to loosen the old grip. You'll hear truths chosen to soothe, not to challenge. Revelations spoken like lullabies, so your deeper mind can try on new beliefs with nothing to defend. If you've grown accustomed to shrinking your desires, or bargaining away your gifts, or keeping quiet about what you really want, tonight, every quiet confession finds its permission here. Even if you count and recount your worth by someone else's ledgers, this is your space to wonder, what if those numbers were never yours to keep? So drift with me, there is no race. Even if you drift beyond these words, the kindness inside them will already be moving through you. Let the undertow of a softer story carry you, unraveling old contracts, offering fresh breath to tired beliefs. You don't have to listen for every meaning. Just let the hush gather around you tonight. It's enough to rest. and let the change happen gently while you sleep. Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is simple, but it might change everything you believe about what you're allowed to receive. What if the smallness you learned about money was never about your soul's true size? What if that childhood ledger, kept with anxious hands, careful rules, tightening breath, wasn't a prophecy but only a placeholder? What if the vessel you carry now could become broader, softer enough? A vessel designed for expansion, not drift, not depletion. Here there's nothing to fix, just a space to witness. Not advice, not judgment, not correction. Instead, imagine resting as a candle does after the wind stops, a gentle, steady presence, softened after the storm, receiving warmth and letting it linger. What happens in this space is for your nervous system, long before it's for your thoughts. Each line spoken is a whisper meant to slow the contracting places inside, the ones trained to expect less, prepare for uncertainty, ration hope and hunger alike. This is a kind of recoding, gentle as a tide smoothing the shore, again and again, without demand. It's an invitation for the deepest part of you, the one beneath the ledger, beyond the old scripts, to notice. What if none of those rules belonged to you in the first place? Maybe here, simple truth is more than enough. If somewhere within you still feels the budget of a child, the hidden math that taught you how to shrink, settle, apologize for wanting, memorize scarcity, then let this be a balm for all those tally marks. Let this be a homecoming to the truth that your worth was never summed in coin or withheld allowance, or the pinched language of grown-ups whispering about bills beneath their breath. If you sometimes pause before asking for more, if letting abundance in feels like disloyalty, if you hold your breath a little, just before the receiving, know that this conversation was crafted for you. You're not alone. Those invisible contracts, those old lines, so many of us carry them. And yet the vessel isn't fixed. The light it was meant to welcome is still waiting, soft, persistent, patient beyond all measurement. Stay a while, even as you drift. Let the words pool around you like water, as you surrender needing to do. You do not have to strain to understand, memorize, or resolve anything tonight. Just let this story circle you, the way light gathers in the hollow of a cup. Rest in the knowing that there's nothing wrong with how you learned to budget longing, and nothing permanent about those boundaries either. Perhaps you'll find, as sleep comes slow and silk soft, that the vessel of you has always been an opening, craving the light for which it was shaped. You don't have to listen closely, just let it surround you. Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is simple, but it might change everything you believe about what money means and how time flows through you. What if the urgency, the scrimping and saving, the stories of not enough, didn't actually belong to you at all? What if those first budgets in childhood, the whispers to wait, to hold back, to be careful, weren't laws but memories? What if the bank account you have now was never meant to be governed by rules that were written before you even knew your worth? What happens here isn't a lesson, it's a recoding. Every sentence is crafted softly, so your nervous system can settle, and your soul can stretch into a truer memory of trust and belonging. If you've ever felt your decisions around money tighten with the echo of a parent's warning, or noticed how old scarcity seems to press pause on what you're allowed to receive, this episode is whispered for you. Tonight we'll loosen the old contracts without blame. Together we'll let every cell remember that abundance is not on anyone else's schedule. So stay with me. Even if your eyes drift closed, Even if your mind wanders, trust that the truth finds its way. The seeds planted tonight will unfold in your timing, not the world's. You don't have to listen closely. Just let these words find their place inside you, gently, effortlessly, without rush, without delay. Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is simple, but it might change everything you believe about wanting more. What if the money lessons you learned as a child weren't the end of your story, but only the first page? What if the small ledgers and whispered warnings around how to save and spend were never meant to bind you, but to show you how it feels to long for more? What if those old rules, carefully drawn, sometimes stained with worry, were always placeholders, waiting for your deeper truths? Here, we're not passing out instructions or teaching you to follow brighter formulas. Every word is here to help those places inside where money still feels tight, to slowly loosen, gently rest, and soften into openness. Each line is a steady reminder. Your nervous system is safe to listen. Your heart is safe to receive. If you've ever hesitated to name your price, or felt your pulse quicken at the thought of asking for more, if you've shouldered invisible shame for wanting comfort, for craving enough, or for simply imagining a life where wealth feels neutral and love-filled, this journey is for you. Stay close, even if you drift, even if sleep takes you before the words are done. Let this gentle recoding reach the oldest beliefs, waiting behind your eyes. Let yourself ease into it, one breath at a time. You are allowed to rest as you listen, even as you grow. You don't have to lock on to every phrase or wrestle with each memory. Just let this warmth surround you and carry you quietly toward a different morning. There was a time, not long ago, or maybe longer, when the numbers you watched at the kitchen table were absolute. Someone else's idea of what was safe, what was too much, what could last. Little lines scratched into composition books, receipts folded into tight corners, maybe a hard conversation that left silence in its place. Back then, wanting more might have felt like a sin, or at least a secret. Small hands learning to count pennies and promises, noticing every sigh when a bill came due, watching how hunger or hope showed up on the faces you loved most. But tonight, as you lie back, you're invited to wonder. What if none of it was your fault? What if those rules were never sacred, just adopted, unexamined, and quietly handed down like old coats? What if money, right here, right now, was allowed to become neutral again? What if its meaning could dissolve, not into lack, but into softness? Like breath moving through you, like an old sound fading into silent safety. There is a kinder way. An ancient invitation, humming beneath the surface of every fearful number and hurried calculation. Money is only a servant, not a measure of who you are, not the enforcer of old, exhausted rules. Every dollar, every coin, every exchange, simply the echo of choices made. Not good, not bad, only a tool handed, sometimes clutched, sometimes released. Let yourself notice, without blame, all the quiet agreements your nervous system made without words. The flinches each time you went to charge the double-checking before you said yes. The way you dreamed with half an eye open, always weighing what was allowed. Feel for those places in your body, maybe your chest, your belly, your jaw, where money memories landed, unprocessed and unseen. Give them your inward glance without fixing or hiding. Let them know you're here, and that resting is permitted at last. What happens here is not a lesson. It is not an argument. It is a gentle, permissioned undoing, a space for your oldest contracts to be rewritten in the language of breath, safety, and possibility. Even if tonight you remember the sharp edges of a parent's voice or the cold logic of "we can't," you are not reliving it. You are witnessing, you are updating that operating system. With every calm syllable, your subconscious is being offered a new default, that your value is not set by anyone else's scarcity, that money is a river, not a rule book, that love lies, not ledgers. If you have noticed yourself shrinking, making yourself smaller to fit someone's idea of worthy, or stretching beyond comfort to prove you deserve a seat at the table, know this is now a place for softening. And tonight, surrender is enough. Surrender is everything. You're allowed to shift even if those old pages still whisper. This is not erasure, it is rewriting. Let the new words move in. Let the permission feel foreign but friendly. Sleep can take you even now. Still, the work continues in silence, and you are already changing. You do not have to remember each truth by morning. The roots are growing, hidden, faithful. Trust the process and trust your pace. Nothing can hurry or hinder what is already yours by nature. Let these stories drift like clouds, gentle, observed, without demand. Let your breath soften at the edges. Feel the welcome return to your hands, to your heart, to your inheritance of wholeness. Sink in, the recoding is here. The old accounting is done. You don't have to listen closely. Just let it surround you. Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is simple, but it might change everything you believe about wanting more. What if numbers written on old grocery lists, the hush around bills, the quiet wince of a parent at a checkout, or that whispered rule about not asking for too much? What if these were only early brushstrokes, not the final painting of what you get to receive? What if your very first understanding of enough was only meant to be temporary, soft clay, never hardened stone? What if the rules you learned about money, what you should want, what you're allowed to ask for, how much permission you have to expand, were written by hands that had also inherited worry, not just wisdom? Here, each breath is an unmapped possibility. This isn't a lesson, it's a recoding. Every sentence tonight is designed to help your nervous system soften, to release the ancient grip of scarcity, while your deeper self starts to remember what was true before the rules were taught. Nothing you learned as a child, about stretching $1, apologizing for buying something new, or feeling guilt for wanting more, has the power to set today's limits, unless the story runs on loop, unchallenged. Tonight you'll hear silent contracts that have been running in the background, quiet scripts like "don't outshine," or "hold back," or "wait until you're safe." And with each gentle reflection, those old agreements will loosen, one soft exhale at a time. Maybe there was a little ledger or an envelope system, coins counted, pennies saved, wishes postponed for later. Maybe love was measured by sacrifice or by how small a want could become. But here, we breathe differently. Here, you are not budgeting your joy. Here, no spreadsheet sets the ceiling for your soul. Here, you will notice the old fears or hesitations, not to blame them, but to finally see how old and worn they are, so they can slip inch by inch from your hands. If you've ever wondered why it feels hard to charge your worth, why you wince at asking for a raise, or why the brightest desires seem at odds with the rules you inherited, then this is your sanctuary for unlearning. If you have labored to tidy up your wants, to shrink them out of loyalty, or to keep peace, or to avoid the chaos of too much, let this be where you try a new pattern. Tonight, our only ambition is rest, and the truth that seeps in while you are not trying. Every word is a gentle invitation to recalibrate safety, not in smaller amounts, but in a kinder rhythm with life. Even if drowsiness sweeps you up, these words find another way to settle. They trail off like lullabies, rooting not just in thought, but in shoulder, jaw, and chest. Your nervous system is the audience here long after your mind drifts off. So stay, even if you sleep halfway through, even if you think you're missing out. The truths here were always meant to enter under the door, slip between old defenses, and find you in that lush halfway realm where change finally feels peaceful. What could it mean to let worthiness and calm belong to each other? To teach your body, through breath after breath, that more is available, not because you work harder or fix what's broken, but because something wiser is softening, permission is exhaled rather than earned. And tonight, let yourself be carried. Even restlessness is allowed. Just listen or don't. There is no test. These words wait, circling, until you are ready to let them in. If you find yourself tangled in old equations, deserving equals struggle, or more means less for someone else, you don't have to untie them all at once. Every inhale is enough. Every slow exhale lets another knot slacken. As you lie back, know that you are not trying to fix anything, you are only remembering. Some truths are gentle because they need no defense. You were never late to abundance, never lacking the password for trust, never truly limited by anyone else's budget but your own willingness to receive. So ease yourself into softness just as you are. Every part of you, tight, skeptical, longing, or already half asleep, is perfectly welcome. You don't have to listen closely. Just let it surround you, and in the quiet, let new trust begin. There is a hush that settles over the mind when the world gets quiet, a gentleness that emerges when there's nothing left to chase or count or control. Here, beneath the weight of closing eyelids, a softer truth begins to surface, the recognition that abundance starts long before the numbers ever find the ledger, before childhood rules about spending and saving ever sink their roots into your bones. It is easy to trace the lines between what you learned in small hands and the limits you place on yourself now. So many grew up keeping close inventory of what was enough, listening for the click of a light turning off to save, watching the fridge to know when to ration, glancing at the calendar and feeling the pulse of wait until payday. Parents, caregivers, whole family systems trading comfort for caution, and dreaming only as large as the grocery list allowed. But something deep in you remembers a time before those rules. Before coins and conditions, before worth was tallied in so many careful columns. There beneath the accounting is a hunger that's never about what money could buy, but about how safe it felt to be held. To know you belonged, not to dollars or duties or the scarcity they whispered, but to something living, constant, unseen. Most of the world grew up thinking this inheritance was permanent, a birthright of limitation. What was modeled in childhood became the unconscious ceiling. Even now, part of you still checks the door for permission, still waits for approval like a silent audit, still measures the worth of asking by whatever background climate once filled your home. And yet, with a single slow breath, there is a loosening, a noticing. Maybe money was never the true measure. Maybe the account that matters most is not the one built in units and stress, but in the currency of connection, threads woven between yourself and the invisible, the laughter, the kindness, the warmth exchanged at the table, no matter how bare. What if the nervous system wasn't built around money, but resonance? What if you could feel wealth as the safe hum of being accepted by yourself, by others, by something far greater? At night, the body remembers all the small lessons around cost and caution, the messages folded into bedtime stories, the pauses around extravagant wishes, the hush that surrounded big wants. Not to shame, but to protect. Not to limit, but to keep small dreams safe from disappointment. Still, those walls can soften. Every breath in this moment is a gentle way of letting them go, releasing the quiet bracing, learning another feeling in the body, assurance. Let your chest rise, slow and deliberate. Each inhale is a new invitation. Each exhale a paperwork burnt, a tally crossed out, releasing the old math, maybe only for tonight. Where others saw currency as control, there is another form, one without ledgers or expectation. What gets counted more than money? The touch that soothes, the presence that doesn't judge, the listening that says you belong just because you are here. Every nervous contraction around spending or charging, every flinch at generosity or gift, grew from the old contract signed in smaller days. Not wrong, not forever. Patterns shaped by people doing their best, yet patterns aren't prophecies. They're just stories told on repeat until a softer voice begins to narrate. Maybe security is not the result of numbers, but a consequence of belonging. Every time you're met with warmth, by yourself, by another, by the echo of faith, something fundamental rewrites. Scarcity can't survive in the presence of pure connection. Breathe that knowing in, let your stomach soften, your jaw unclench, your hands relax by your sides. The mind often returns to old bookkeeping, recounting, forecasting, defending. But the heart knows another economy. It does not charge interest on closeness. It does not invoice for kindness. It operates on a trust that cannot be measured, only felt, rebuilding itself with every loving acknowledgement, first inside, then overflowing outward. At the sleepy edge of self-awareness, recognize this growing ease, the rich, soundless network of ties woven in every friendly glance, every sacred memory, every warm laugh past midnight. These strands outlast currency. They outstrip deposit slips and tax returns. They are the true inheritance, the wealth that no budget can ever claim or diminish. Tonight there is nowhere to impress, defend, or justify. No account to reconcile, no approval to earn. If the childhood budget wrote one story, let your adult self write another. One not ruled by spreadsheets but energized by connection, transparent, trusting, soft around the edges. The more you allow those bonds to breathe, the more prosperity finds its way into your life with no transaction necessary. Let every exhale release a memory of tightness. Let each lingering thought simply float, untethered by old anxieties. Allow yourself, right now, to be rich in belonging, even if you once felt poor in provision. Here, your worth is not subject to balancing acts. Here, every part of you is welcomed and provided for by a deeper law. That connection, above all, is the most inexhaustible form of abundance. And if the nervous system wants to return briefly to old accounting, to catalog fears, rehearse regrets, or revisit the ledgers, it is permitted. Even in those reverberations, you are free to forgive the smallness, to thank it for its attempts at safety, and then to let it dissolve, slow as evening, soft as the hush that follows understanding. With each slow breath, the new contract is being written, one that values the relationships that sustain you, the gentle greetings, the steady presence, the faith that outruns every dollar sign. This is a currency that grows only with use. The more you offer it to yourself, to those you care for, to the unseen thread that connects all, the more it multiplies, quietly and endlessly. Drift now. Rest in the assurance that your childhood budget was just an old program, and now a new operating system beckons. Richer, kinder, encoded with the principles of enoughness, safety, and sacred reciprocity. There is no limit to what flows in when the exchange is love itself. Let the old story go. Let connection take its place. Breathe and let belonging be enough tonight. There's a silent room inside you where the numbers first began. Ink pages, worn edges, a hand-me-down ledger held together by thread and the hush of careful voices. It's so easy to mistake this old book for a prophecy, written before you ever learned your own signature. Most, for years, live by balances not of their making, sums whispered from kitchen tables, worried glances over groceries, rules about what can be replaced and what must wait for some far-off someday. The math runs in quiet circuits, ghost lights through the body, tracing what is possible, what is too much, what is too soon tonight. What if you set that ledger down? Feel the cover in your hands, its familiar weight, its pages thin with repetition, every line a memory, a rule, a silent contract. These rules once kept someone safe, and maybe they were needed, but there is a difference between safety and life. Sometimes safety is the narrow hallway, footsteps careful, breaths held, voices softened so the walls won't crumble. Life asks for something wider. It's strange how we hold these old ledgers close, even when the ink blurs from rain or years or longing. We grow up, but sometimes our answers to money, yes, no, not yet, are echoed scripts. Most people fold their dreams, fit them to the space between decimals, explanations, and the edge of the page. But here, tonight, feel the hush. There's an invitation lingering at the edge of the old math. What if you could step out, beyond the ledger, beyond the columns and sums and years of rationed confidence? Imagine it. The floor beneath you is cool, steady, grew familiar, bending over figures late into memory. Take a breath, gentle as the first morning after a storm. Let your hands, for a moment, unfold from that book. The air changes. There's a stillness, a blankness beyond the next line, a wide, white hush. The ledger ends, but you can move forward. Crossing the edge is slow. The body remembers. There might be a part that hesitates. After all, how many times did you check the total before acting, before asking, before allowing yourself to want? That pause, let it be soft. A breath, a letting go. Like loosening the knot on an old drawstring, retied 1,000 times. Like setting down a heavy bag carried across childhood winters. Like finally exhaling after years of watching the cost of every wish. You might notice the mind flickers, wants to reach back, count again, double-check the figures. This is normal. Those numbers were anchors, rules about how much you're allowed to have, how much is safe to receive. How quickly joy must be paid for. Stand at the border of that blankness. Let your toes feel the shift. Cool ledger behind you, warm possibility in front. The past is a known sum. But this space, the one you're in right now, asks nothing of you but trust. No numbers here, no running tally, only the unmeasured breath and the unclaimed moment. You are not what was counted. Breathe in. Listen to the silence after the final column. It is not an emptiness to fear. It is space for something new. The nervous system wavers, old habits spark as if loss is just around the corner. But this isn't loss. This is a horizon. See if you can feel the difference between being careful and being free. They live in the body differently. Carefulness is an old pattern. Hands gripped, gut pulled tight, scanning, bracing, small freedom begins quietly, with the loosening of the jaw, the shoulders, the open palm. Here you are, standing between two worlds. the record of limits, and the blank invitation beyond. Letting go doesn't dishonor what came before. These ledgers were written from hope, a hope that an account well kept would bring ease or enough or protection from disappointment. But you are more than a number. Worth is not tabulated. There is slow magic in breathing here, letting nervousness flicker and dim, letting the trust that you might make a new mark, a new script, a new rule take gentle shape. The stories you learned at the dinner table were small currents in a wide ocean. They shaped your sailing, but not the destination. Another breath, as if you're dusting flour from your hands after years of pinched crumbs, as if you finally let your spine unfurl in a room with no low ceiling, as if you walk barefoot into golden grass, away from the hard lines of enough and not yet. What rules did you inherit? What numbers still echo when you pause before saying yes, before raising your price, before accepting generosity? Most people, in quiet moments, still try to fit themselves on old pages. And trying to move forward while reading yesterday's math, it's understandable. That book is familiar, but possibility lives outside its cover. Tonight, you can sense blankness ahead, not as a threat, but as white space. Feel your breath steady. Each inhale brings the scent of possibility. Each exhale, a soft untying of the old knots. Repeat softly inside, I am allowed to outgrow accounts that never knew my name. If your heartbeat feels quick, let it. If your thoughts want to curl back to the known sum, let them be gentle. This is body memory, not who you are becoming. Slowly stretch the moment. It does not have to be a single leap. Step by small step, feeling for the sturdy ground beneath. Every new footfall leaves a faint print in possibility. No one else's writing, only yours. As you rest here, the story shifts. Children of ledgers can become adults who narrate new scripts, choosing to trust what cannot yet be counted, accepting that value arrives before it is proven, living into a new arithmetic where joy, worth, and timing cannot run out. There is all the time you need. There is no audit waiting in the dark, nothing to prove, nothing to tally. Only the gentle permission to pause, to breathe, to listen as the old rules loosen, and one quiet moment after another, you step into the space where anything can be written and everything is possible. Welcome back to the Abundance Alchemist, your quiet space to remember who you are. Tonight's message is gentle, but it might ask everything of your beliefs about what it means to live with more than enough. What if the columns and numbers from childhood ledger books never held the final say over your future capacity to receive? What if the smallest family budget had nothing to do with the soul's endless accounts? What if abundance was not a transaction, but your inheritance, unbreakable, quiet, illuminating every shadowed memory? Tonight there are no lessons, only a tender rewriting. Each phrase here works slowly, untangling fear with softness, allowing your nervous system to let go, while your deeper self remembers it was never measured by receipts or rings of coins. If you've caught yourself shrinking, charging too little, fearing the next step, or hesitating to hold more, this episode is here like a hand on your back, steady, warm, and listening. So drift with me. Even sleep won't block what is gentle and true. You don't need to try, just be surrounded. Let yourself settle, right here, as if the bed beneath you is warm earth, as if each breath is a silent invitation to remember the sacred comfort of being held. Imagine yourself in a field at dusk, barefoot, toes brushing against cool blades of golden grass, the world wide and soft around you, a breeze drifting gentle over your skin, each inhale drawing in the scent of possibility, each exhale releasing strands of a story that no longer fits. You walk slowly. The more you move, the less you need to hurry. The easier it becomes to drop the patterns you wore as a child, the ones shaped by family, by rules handed down gently, or with pain numbers whispered with worry, repeated with love or with fear. It's all fading behind you, step by quiet step. Picture now, the sun resting on the horizon, neither rising nor falling, only watching, only illuminating what already is. Its light is golden, calm, touching your hands, warming the center of your chest, nothing rushed, nothing denied. You are walking away from small ledgers, silent tightness, the sound of someone else's scarcity lingering behind your ribs. Every stride is a soft rebellion, a deeper remembering that wealth can be safe, quiet, and made new. If you wish, kneel here. Let the earth support your weight. Let the sky arch over you like a velvet invitation. Notice how your body feels when there is nothing to earn, no one left to impress, nothing owed but what you choose. Your breath becomes slower, heavier, rooted in your stomach, like the deep rhythm of a drum echoing far back in time. With each breath in, you draw strength from the ground. With each breath out, you let go of the curly thread of old contracts. Childhood promises, the ones that once kept you small, safe, useful, begin to soften, unraveling with every long exhale. See how these threads flutter away, carried by the wind like dandelion seeds, falling, rising, dissolving into gentler truths. Pause here. Notice your heartbeat. It's quieter, more trusting, as if it knows now that worth was never measured by what was withheld or what was never enough. In this hush, hear the distant song of water, maybe a river, maybe the ocean inside you, reminding you that receiving is not a test. It's a right. It's remembering how to open your palms after years spent clenching, how to lie back and float when you were taught to grip. Now let yourself lie down in this field, soft grass beneath your body, scent of earth like comfort. The sky above turning ink-deep, velvet blue. The last of the sunlight touches your face, a feather-light blessing. You do not need to perform worthiness here. You do not need to rehearse scarcity. The ground holds you all the same. Let memories come and go, the childhood budget, the rules you followed, the unspoken worries that shaped your choices. Each memory is like a bird flying low, drifting away as quickly as it lands. You bless the little one you were for surviving, for learning safety where you could, for believing what felt true at the time. You forgive the protectors who taught you smallness. They too were protecting something tender. Breathe in. There is nothing left to fix tonight. Breathe out. There is new space for receiving, new space for ease, new space for choosing without old noise. Let these truths echo, each one arriving as softly as mist. Receiving is safe now. Receiving is safe now. My worth never belonged to numbers. My worth never belonged to numbers. I am open to more than what I once believed possible. I am open to more than what I once believed possible. I release shame. Gently, with every breath, I release shame, gently. With every breath, the past no longer decides my capacity. The past no longer decides my capacity.